Like a lot of kids who went to school in the 2000s, my first exposure to choose-your-own-adventure storytelling was R.L. Stine's Give Yourself Goosebumps line of novels. Specifically, I remember Escape from the Carnival of Horrors, mostly because of this cool purple alligator on the cover, but also because of how often I found myself staring down the barrel of one of the book's 22 bad endings. While there's no shortage of colorful and graphic ways you can lose a Goosebumps novel, the experience stuck with me as one of the first times I would try to win a story by making the right choice. As I'd get older, and the medium of video games would allow for more narrative freedom, I'd continue to chase that feeling of trying to get a good grade in the narrative. I think we're at a point in games where winning a story has fallen out of favor as compared to having a meaningful experience, but I still think there's a certain charm in reading a book that's trying to kill you. The Test of High Sorcery, by Kienna Shaw and Donathan Fry, combines that style of mid-90s CYOA text with the high fantasy of the Dungeons & Dragons Dragonlance setting. I think it's an interesting and largely successful experiment in combining the kinds of solo experiences that the indie tabletop scene has dominated for years, and scaffolding an entire adventure module around the concept of a player-driven story. I don't normally cover D&D stuff on my channel, but because of Shaw's work with the TTRPG safety kit, and their work with the indie scene generally, I thought it was worth digging into. The adventure takes place in the world of Krynn, specifically the Wayreth Forest, where the legendary Tower of Wayreth calls all would-be sorcerers to take its deadly test. In the fiction of the module, spellcasters who do not successfully complete the Test of High Sorcery and align themselves with one of the three orders are considered rogue mages, who will be hunted and potentially stripped of their magical power for the rest of their lives. Over the next few days, structured into 3 chapters, players will meet fellow test takers, indicate a preference for which order they'd like to join, and undergo magical trials that will push their willpower, cunning, and ability to survive to their limits. It's a fairly standard adventure setup, but I think the best parts about the Test of High Sorcery are the branching paths players can take to achieve their right to practice magic. I'll get to how particular paths are chosen in the mechanics section, but by my count, there are over 90 scenes players might encounter over the course of their test, many of which they might never see depending on the choices they've made. While my personal playthrough had me navigate a river of souls and fight a gorgon, there was an entire other section where I could have explored an ancient ruin and struggled through a hallway full of autonomous hands. This module is clearly drawing from high fantasy keystones that D&D is famous for: gelatinous cubes, haughty dragons, and mischievous fae that never give a gift without a price. Shaw and Fry are clearly experienced writers, as there's some text that's truly impressive. In particular, I really liked their description of the Hall of Mages as, quote, an immense obsidian chamber with a 60-foot domed ceiling. 20 chairs sit in shadows, while one central chair gives off a cold, white glow. Every scenario, despite drawing from well-worn tropes, has some prosaic flourish or interesting twist that kept me engaged. The scene that stood out most to me was when I was thrust into the wedding of my unrequited love, forced between saving them and saving their bride as meteors rained from the sky. At the end, players will confront one final challenge, a combat scenario that, if you've played smartly, you'll have enough magic items and tools to overcome. You'll be allowed to choose your order, having proven your merit as a spellcaster, and the text provides a list of hooks that can follow your character into their next journey, perfect to be woven in at opportune moments by a savvy game master. That said, you are in no way guaranteed to pass your test. During my playthrough, I died twice, once turned to stone by the Gorgon, another time melted by an impassive ooze. Furthermore, the test grants all players the option to simply walk away from magic entirely, with supporting traits and endgame hooks to make that choice feel narratively satisfying. That this module allows you to give up, and gives you enough scaffolding for it to be a completely valid point in your character's arc, is pretty neat. The core of the adventure leans on 5th edition skill checks and combat. Generally speaking, a skill check will present a player with a difficulty class, and players will roll a d20 plus ability modifier to meet or exceed that DC, in order to succeed on the challenge. Combat works similarly. You roll a d20, and add your character's attack modifiers to hit an enemy's armor class, and do damage depending on what weapon or spell you choose. Typically, in a game like Dungeons & Dragons, a game master will be the person making choices for what a hostile creature does during combat, but Shaw and Fry instead provide a set of guidelines for solo players to run monsters on their own, which works perfectly fine. Largely, players will be managing their HP and spell slots, burning magic to earn advantageous rolls on difficult skill checks, while collecting powerful items to make up for the times when their failures cost them in blood. However, the best part of the module is its system of traits, tags that stick to your character depending on what choices you make and skill checks you succeed, describing what they've done and how it's affected them. For instance, in the very beginning of the module, I accepted a gift from a circle of dancing fairies, like a fool. Halfway through the second chapter, that gift came back to bite me in the ass, as a hag demanded payment for the present, which did not turn out so well for my character. When my playthrough was complete, I had a total of 16 traits my character acquired over the course of their test. Uncertain about the future, rescued the captain, and ooze-scarred, to name a few. These traits play well into the adventure's branching structure, because they're also keyed to various scenes. It's not just picking a prompt and hoping you've made the right choice. Your character's successes and failures earlier on in the module help shape what happens at the end. Furthermore, these traits come with suggestions in the epilogue for how they affect your character going forward. My ooze-scarred sorcerer causes strangers to avert their eyes, as they're shocked by what the test required of my body. I think my biggest criticism of the module is not really a problem with the text itself, as much as it is a problem with 5e generally. When you've got a module that relies so heavily on skill challenges, there's a lot you can miss if you simply roll poorly. My playthrough lost out on a lot of cool stuff because I got bad rolls, and that's the fault of 5th edition not having a system to allow players to fail forward. I would have liked if there was some way to manage a mixed success, like when PBTA games allow you to pick various outcomes from a list, and on mixed successes, you get one good and one bad option. There's a lot to like about the test of high sorcery. If you're a fan of high fantasy, looking for a module to stick into an existing campaign, or just generally miss the feeling of flipping through pages, trying to narrowly avoid death at the hands of some sadistic monster, you're going to enjoy this text. Even if you don't play D&D, I think the scenarios and challenges presented in the text would slot well into a dungeon that needs a little extra oomph. I'm really glad Shaw and Fry have tried to take the solo RPG experience a step further, and for all my gripes about its skill challenges, I think it's still a neat way to provide a full adventure module for a single player. I will also say, the news about the D&D Open Gaming license broke well after Shaw offered to let me review the adventure. I can't imagine either she or Fry are excited about what might happen in the future, and I really hope that all those folks out there who have made a living writing stuff for D&D land on their feet. As for myself, this news is as good a sign as any that sticking to indie stuff is the best path forward. Good luck to everyone out there in the tabletop scene. I hope this year will be the best one yet. Thank you everybody for watching. I really appreciate everybody who takes the time to see what I'm saying about tabletop games. I actually missed talking about games over the short break, so I'm really excited to be back in the saddle. If you want to find more of my work, my socials are in the description, but the best place where you can find all my information together is at aavoit.com. I also do 2 podcasts. The first is at Mortified Pod, where me and my friend Layla do critical media analysis. We're going to talk about the Elder Scrolls Oblivion, so that'll be fun. I also do a show with my friends Michael and Josh that's at The Bible Boys, where they, who are ex-evangelicals, and I, who am an ex-Catholic, talk about Christian media and either praise or condemn it, and we usually have a good time, so please check that out if that seems like something you might be interested in. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope to have another video out in 2 weeks. Ideally, it's going to be about Thomas Manuel's The Spider in the City, which I'm very excited to read, so I'll see you then.